have here, a new merc in our lively town. That being the case, I've got some work for you. No details, just meet with the client at the coords I've sent you. All will make sense in due time. Happy hunting.
Hi, my name is Stella, and this is your first time at Clouds. Well, I should probably tell you that my services aren't exactly like the other dolls. I'm more of a storyteller than a people pleaser. And boy, oh boy, do I have quite the story of redemption for you. So sit back, relax, and slot the shard. Cyberpunk 2077. A game with perhaps one of the worst launches in human history. Bugs, glitches, unfinished gameplay elements, skills not working, graphics not loading properly, game-breaking mishaps, and unfortunately, a lot of mishandled hype. After strapping on my max tack gear and mantis blading through all of these issues, seeing the very well thought out and polished story and characterizations on display before me, I couldn't help but fall in love with 2077. Granted, I was, and still am, a hardcore fan of 2077's source material, its tabletop RPG systems 2020 and Red. But I know so many people who also fell in love with this game without ever knowing about its origins. Even though myself and a ton of other people were really excited to explore this classic tabletop world in an amazing-looking AAA video game, there's no denying the overall negative impact this initial release had on the general public. A lot of people were rightfully pissed at the game barely functioning on last-gen consoles and even misbehaving on high-end PCs. Things looked pretty dire for 2077 and CDPR, but this immense pressure didn't keep them down. After a plethora of patches that would improve aspects of the game's core experience and the monumental release of the Edgerunners anime, things really started to look up for Night City. I am so happy to finally say that 3 years and one sweet gameplay fundamental overhaul later, Cyberpunk 2077 is finally ready. Update 2.0 is the most stable, playable, immersive, and most importantly fun version of 2077. It's been a long road, but we're finally here, and I am so pumped to re-examine this fantastic title, now fully operational. However, before we continue, I need to tell you guys something. So I had a bit of involvement in Cyberpunk Edgerunners, notably the music video, Let You Down. It's a long, boring story, don't worry about it. And I do play a character in Phantom Liberty. Her name is Stella, she has a robot voice, and she's also the cutest character in the expansion. If this all bothers you, that is completely valid, I understand. I'm not looking at this video as a review, and neither should you. Think of it more as a very passionate impressions video. Okay. Without wasting any more time, let's see how 2.0 and Phantom Liberty reboots Cyberpunk 2077. Sorry for not coming back in a year, by the way. So Cyberpunk's combat gameplay loop is still the same stuff you experienced in 2020, just way more polished. Some elements have been completely overhauled. Making main character V into the edge runner of your dreams is now cooler than ever. Deck yourself out in body-enhancing chrome, get armed to the teeth with power, tech, and smart weapons, and a ton of melee weapons, like the revamped blades and bludgeoners, and chain swords. Grenades and heals are now strangely tied to a cooldown timer. I thought this change was weird at first, because V basically has a regenerating heal and magically endless grenades of any type. But then I remembered that in the original release, I basically had hundreds upon hundreds of all of those things at any given time. The first thing an eagle-eyed cyberpunk veteran may pick up on are the game's new animations. Not necessarily to gunplay, because shooting and reloading always looked amazing, but more on the melee side. Tons of improvements to combat and weapon animations have been implemented. If you remember, one of my complaints in my original review was the lackluster feel to melee combat. Well, it isn't like Devil May Cry levels of quality, but it is way better than Release 2077. For example, melee builds that focus on something like blades are way more viable and fun due to the overall improved feel to swinging weapons. And blocking and parrying, of course. Not to mention the various updates to combat functionality, but I'll talk about that that in a second. Enemy animation is also improved and easier to read for said melee parries. My recent Cyber Psycho build involved mantis blades as my primary weapon, and oh my god, these demonic arm swords feel the best they ever have. No longer are you getting that buggy animation on equip either. Slicing guys to pieces looks and feels amazing now. Speaking of the guys you'll be slicing and dicing, the most significant combat overhaul is enemy AI. No longer will these thugs, gangers, and military cops just stand around occasionally shooting at you. They actually take cover, block your melee attacks, and even use their cyberware, like the Sandeva stand, to dodge your bullets. Enemy quick hacks are now displayed with an on-screen line tracing back to their origin. You can stop these hacks a lot easier now, but the same also goes for yours. If you're low on intelligence or have lower level hacks, they'll be easier to detect from enemy runners, adding a much-needed layer of strategy to Netrunner builds. Playing through patch 2.0 with these enemy enhancements made me really see how limited these guys' capabilities were in the release version of the game. It was something I definitely noticed in OG 2077, but now everything is so much better, it makes what came before stand out like a sore thumb. I love actually being challenged in combat, especially on the higher difficulties now, as those were also rebalanced. Every single difficulty is now a little more challenging than it used to be. Something else that is a definitive improvement is the leveling system and skill trees. The entire system has been overhauled. Leveling attributes grants you simpler increases to stats now, where the original game had like a full list of updates for every time you leveled an attribute. Now you just get an increase to a particular stat, like body upping your hit point total and reflexes upping your crits. I like this a lot more because it's just clearer in what you're speccing in. It also leaves skill attunement to some of the Cyberware screen, making that area of character progression a lot more important. My favorite thing about 2.0 is how each skill tree actually unlocks clear and defined perks, functions that really help differentiate playstyles. In the release version, there were tons of skills that were mostly all tiny stat buffs, but the functions you'd unlock were things like knife throwing and aerial takedowns, arguably essential features to basic combat gameplay. Those particular things are now just part of V's out-of-the-box skill set. The new changes add a ton more player expression. I praise the build variety in the original release because I could see its potential, but now that you're unlocking things that V can do in combat, getting those genuine skills is way cooler than little bitch baby stat improvements. That being said, when you do get stat improvements, you really feel them this time around, like increasing your cyberware capacity and mastery over certain weapon types, disabling or slowing their use of stamina. The best part about the leveling system is you can freely respec and reallocate each perk point you spend. If you've got a good enough attribute loadout, you can really experiment. One thing I would have loved to see is free attribute respecking. As it stands right now, you can only re-roll those stats once per playthrough. There's probably some hard coding going on with this particular stat that doesn't allow free respecking. Still, it is much better than having no attribute respecking at all. There's so many more tactile skills now that feel like you're progressing towards something. It really does change what the game feels like. Over-the-top melee finishers, crouch sprinting, and the game's new anime dash ability. Dashing is fantastic. It doesn't really have a penalty for the amount of times you can use it, as long as you've got the stamina for it. You can get around the battlefield very quickly now, and can even upgrade it into an air dash, channeling your inner Mega Man X. Sounds good, right? Well, now all of your attacks, including firing your guns, use stamina. Running out of stamina doesn't stop you from shooting, but you can't dash while winded. Timing dashes and attacks is an important balance to combat now. My Cyber Psycho build ended up being really interesting with the new skill trees, because I basically spec'd my character in a direction where as long as I was moving and melee attacking, my health and stamina was regenerating. It was basically my X-23 build. If I switched to my guns, any damage I took was devastating, because I wasn't moving as much, you know? I was taking cover. It was so cool for ranged battles. I'd have to carefully make my way to a vantage point where I could get my blades out again. Another really cool new addition is the skill progression sheet, which shows off a small list of archetypal cyberpunk classes. Headhunter, Netrunner, and Solo, for example. These meters increase and give you rewards depending on how you play the game. It's a really cool way to kind of identify what build you're speccing in as you play. It goes back to the labeling of fluid class system CDPR was going for originally. In short, the level up screen is now something I get really excited to open instead of really confused and indecisive like the original 2077. Sorry, like there are even skills for tech tech weapons in the tech tree now. Everything just makes more sense. You immediately know what you're getting into instead of trying to figure out a giant crossword puzzle of little pictures and stats. Cyberware works pretty differently now. First off, each piece of cyberware can be individually leveled, making something like subdermal armor feel like a thing you spend time with, upgrading it as you go. Your armor rating comes from your cyberware now too, so clothes don't really affect this stat unless it's actual armor like a bulletproof vest. So V's metallic booty shorts no longer give her an armor rating better than a max tack getup. But that don't mean you can't wear them. Much more immersive and better off this way. There are more pieces of cyberware for V's legs that make her run faster or step more quietly. Something brand new and greatly appreciated from a fan's perspective is the new body capacity limit. So V can only chrome so much before the negative side effects begin to kick in, like HP and defensive debuffs. This kind of replicates the humanity stat from the tabletop game. Humanity was a sort of threshold you had for the amount of cybernetics you can add to your body before going cyber psycho. There are, of course, perks that allow you to raise this limit, and also one based on David from the Edgerunners anime that lets you have legitimate bursts of cyber psychosis during battles if your chrome exceeds your body limit. It's super cool now seeing this very important aspect of the game's lore getting some much needed attention. Earlier I talked about the mantis blades feeling better to slay with, but now you can even block and deflect bullets fired at you back at enemies. You can also supercharge punches with the gorilla arms, sending people into the stratosphere, and even hack into enemies while whipping them with your mono wire. I really love how CDPR gave every piece of chrome a hell of a lot more significance. In the release version of 2077, Cyberware kind of felt like another skill tree, where some of the only tactile combat and traversal features were locked to. Wow, I unlocked more armor stats, and a double jump, woohoo! Now it feels so much more like a part of V. The game does a great job at warning you when you're approaching your body limit too, so it feels like you're taking care of your cute little digital merc. One of the hottest points of contention surrounding the original release of 2077 was its open world. Some thought it to be a little too empty, lacking life and polish. Once you finished everything, there wasn't much point to exploration. All of that coupled with the barrage of bugs affecting traversal, vehicles, and PC behavior, and V getting hit with insane glitches, it made soaking up the atmosphere really difficult for a lot of people. For me personally, I played original 2077 like it was a linear zone-based game. So I didn't really try my hardest to do things like you'd see in a GTA-style title. I'd mostly just ride my cool bike to the next quest location, completely ignoring the lack of life on the streets of NC. It was really until a few patches in where I realized how much better the game was actually getting compared to release. That being said, I did find myself in awe at the game's vistas and neon street scenes quite a bit. What's really great about Cyberpunk's world, Night City, in 2023 is that it feels fucking phenomenal to explore. CDPR have drastically upgraded NPC interactions, cleaned up a lot of bugs and glitches. There are things you can do at shops, like changing your transmog clothing options or sitting down at bars. They added in new apartments that all feel unique, making the world feel like a place that people live in and not just a beautiful backdrop. Mini games are here in the form of arcade machines you can find all over the place, which all happen to be nostalgic callbacks to other classic games, just with a Cyberpunk 2077 twist, and tons of new secrets you can stumble across on your adventures. The level of city detail in 2.0 is a far cry from the NC we fumbled through 3 years back. Citizen AI is just so much better now. One of the first things I did in 2.0 was ride a motorcycle up on a sidewalk to park like you do in real life, very closely to some passerbys, and they didn't all have panic attacks dropping to their knees. On PC, the crowd seemed way more varied and packed. I played the game on PC and PS5 and noticed that on console, the crowds weren't as dense as they were on my 4090 machine. This isn't a real issue that impacts the game's quality, but it is a hell of a sight seeing the realistically packed city center and deader, lower income neighborhoods. I did notice on both platforms that more appropriate NPCs will be seen in respective areas. For example, the opening where you meet up with Misty and Vic had way more sex workers and shady looking people, since that little alleyway has that big strip club. I feel like I've never had a real complaint about Night City in all of my time spent riding my bike through it. It's just one of my favorite open worlds, visually and from a gameplay perspective now. Like, I get why people had or even have problems with it, but I don't know. When you're out under an overcast sky with hard rain beating down, watching the neon roll by with some vibe music playing, it's hard for me to say, wow, this game sure is bad or empty. Like, even back when it came out, you know? You will undeniably run into bugs and glitches on your 2.0 playthrough. I know I did, but they were all tiny things. There are so many new and existing open world details added and refined to 2.0. Things like getting shady texts from creepy people threatening to jump you based on your street cred, and it actually happening, to nicer things like being able to read street signs, for example. I absolutely hate in open world games when you 100% have to rely on a waypoint to get around. I've sunk in countless hours into Night City, so I challenged myself recently to get to Pacifica and Dogtown without the waypoint system, and I did based on my memory and using the in-game signage. These small things add a fantastic layer of immersion that completes the overall feel of what I believe CDPR was going for originally with your Night City adventures. Not to trash on Starfield too much, but it is a breath of fresh air returning to Cyberpunk after experiencing that other game's primary mode of transportation being fast travel and loading screens. It really says a lot when you can do things like wake up in your apartment, fully walk out of it, get on your bike, ride out of the city and back in, and then go to your friend's house without ever seeing a loading screen. Stuff like this is what makes open worlds feel as real as they do, and Night City is no exception now. One thing that bothered me about Release 2077 was you'd never see other people riding motorcycles, and you still kinda don't regularly, but what made me happy is that now the police and gangs will pursue you in any vehicle. So all of those bikes you'd see just sitting around now get used by other entities in Night City, not just V. Every enemy encounter out in the field is still wonderfully accommodating to mostly all playstyles, with the amount of cover, cams, and vertical positioning you can take advantage of. The amount of thought put into these NCPD scanner battles and the main and side quests is still as impressive as it was back in 2020, with the added depth that comes with each playstyle that you can think up. Arriving at an encounter with a low-key version of a faction's theme song playing, only to have it explode into a badass club banger version as the heat rises, is always euphoric. If there was ever a hard AF track that you vibed out to in 2077, please thank one PT Adamczyk and Marcin Przebowicz. I tried. I'm sure about 50 CDPR devs will DM me with extremely polite voice pronunciation guides. Thanks in advance. Speaking of such combat encounters, enemies drop greater loot when you slaughter them now. The entire loot and economy systems have been rebalanced. Enemies always seem to drop less items, but each of the trinkets and treasures you pick up now are all worth it. Vendors and drop points all have a shit ton more money, making stores feel a lot more realistic. You'll rarely drain these establishments dry after a few battles worth of loot. With these changes to combat and loot, it felt like I spent way less time in menus sorting out and sifting through all the crap I'd pick up, and more time in the actual game itself. These streamlined elements definitely make 2077 feel the most action RPG the title's ever felt. For the Night City fashionistas out there, every clothing store now has its appropriate threads based on its location. What really surprised me, but made a ton of sense, is now Netrunners sell Netrunner gear out of their shops. So tight bodysuits and goggles can be found at your local hacker's place. The new police system is something tons and tons of people wanted out of the base game, and for obvious reasons, right? If you're making this giant open world city, it'd make sense if you committed a crime that the police would actually chase you around, you know, instead of magically appearing behind you. Well, none of that is the case anymore, as committing crimes in Night City will trigger police dispatches and patrolling officers. The NCPD increase in number depending on how insane you get. Patrol units, squad cars, armored APCs, heavy troopers, and finally, the judges themselves. Max Tac. Man, it is so cool seeing their AVs descend as they jump down, ready to hunt V. I tested a few police chase encounters and had some really amazing things happen. Max Tac are so much more advanced in 2.0. They'll either be on or above your level. Most of the time, that second one. I remember trying to get away from them by popping Sandevistan, only to find out they do the same thing. Seeing an enemy move in normal speed during your slow motion is cool and kind of terrifying. In an early patch, CDPR actually added in more random encounters where the NCPD would chase around other people to kind of wink and nudge at the player as to what was coming with this larger update. I've done a lot of testing with the new police system, and it is pretty phenomenal. I had one chase where my vehicle got destroyed and then had to outrun max tack on foot. No matter how fast I was double air dashing and jumping, they'd always caught up to me, until I had the bright idea of leading them into Maelstrom territory. The gang literally held off the police as I successfully escaped. I was overcome with adrenaline from this, and it made me stop and realize just how cool the open world is now in 2.0. I even had one chase that was so brutal I had to flee into the ocean, diving all the way down to the sea floor just to lose these fools. It's insane. Fun fact, the intense NCPD chase theme has become one of my favorites, and what's funny about that is I thought it was actually a new piece of music, but to my surprise, it's always been in the game, but I've never heard it because I never had any reason to trigger the cops. That should go to show you how upgraded the police encounters are. This is probably the best time to get into the amazing vehicle combat. So like the concept states, you can now fire your guns from your cars or bikes. You can manually or auto aim, and both feel great. It's kind of metal getting to use a katana or baseball bat from a motorcycle. Real road rash vibes. It's obviously a no-brainer saying that this feature is great and all. It also added so much to the Night City immersion. It's really sick seeing your version of V firing away while putting the pedal to the metal. I know my friends at CDPR are gonna dunk on me for what I'm about to say, but man, does firing a gun from a bike really look like Cyberpunk 2077 in third-person view. So with vehicle combat being a thing, does that mean that vehicle customization is here? Sheesh, Skippy. Calm down, dude. Not having the ability to modify the physical appearance of your ride is definitely still a letdown, but a minor one. I would not be surprised if this kind of thing shows up in Cyberpunk 2, or Orion, or whatever they end up calling it. And with all that said, that's pretty much 2.0's hottest changes and revamps. 2.0 offers a much better and stable Cyberpunk experience while delivering a new feel to players who are familiar with it. I still would have liked to see things like joining certain gangs, chroming out V visually more, and just having a few more mundane activities and mini-games to do around town. Other than those small nitpicks, I can't really complain about the title update. It's something I already loved for the past 3 years. I love the dark future Mike Pondsmith created, and I really do feel that CDPR gets what Maximum Mike was putting down with these characters and world. For me, I kind of look at games like puzzles, where 2077 always had an amazing story piece. The gameplay piece felt like it was from a different puzzle set entirely, but now both of those pieces fit together in terms of quality. Speaking of that, I want to talk more about the base game's story. So, let's do it. Before we begin, I want to throw out a fair spoiler warning, as I know a lot of new players are going to watch this. So please skip to the time that is definitely 100% on screen now to get my thoughts on the game's expansion, Phantom Liberty. Cyberpunk 2077 is one of those stories where every time I play it, I walk away discovering so many new things and gaining an even deeper understanding of what CDPR was trying to say. It's funny because in my last video, I complained about the NCPD scanner missions and blue gigs not having a whole lot of depth, but after many playthroughs, especially with this recent 2.0 run, I've completely flipped on that opinion. It's shocking how well the lore for each street story fits into the gigs, and how some of the gigs fuel aspects of the main quest. Like I said, every time I play, I pick up on some foreshadowing or tiny little detail that was right there in front of my face the entire time. It's kind of incredible how in your face a lot of the story's themes are early in the main quest line. Recently, I got to chat with the game's quest director, Pawel Sasko. I asked him how he and his team came up with the general ideas for the story of Cyberpunk 2077.
It's a very interesting topic, to be honest. Like it all started actually in 2012 or even before that, right? Like when our board, in this case, they've been discussing the matters in regards of the IP, right, with Mike Pondsmith and whatnot. Artistic answer is that we have sort of seen that Cyberpunk becomes more and more relevant for all of us. And it was interesting because like at that time it wasn't maybe this apparent as it is now. It's funny because like when we started working on Cyberpunk, all of those Cyberpunk elements and whatnot, there was like much less of them. Nowadays we see so many more of them. Like as years progress, we see more and more of that. And the history was of Cyberpunk as a genre was that when it was created in 80s and even before, the thing that was important about it was that the fears of Americans, in this case in regards of Japanese domination, especially on the technological side, the collapse of society, like pretty bad situation. And then, as William Gibson says, he said, basically asked why he doesn't write Cyberpunk anymore. He said that Cyberpunk was wrong. That Cyberpunk from 80s was wrong at the end because like the let's say economical and technological domination of Japan over US, it never really happened, and in a way it just became like irrelevant, Cyberpunk. And then sort of when we kind of got our hands on the genre that we liked, it was the genre that we were growing up with, but then again it got sort of deactualized. What we had to do, we had to look at it and think about, okay, what will be relevant for the current audience. And it was very clear that the fears of 80s, those won't be really relevant. And when we started delving deeper into that, like we figured that there is so many topics that haven't been really a center of Cyberpunk, the old Cyberpunk, but they can be the center of a new Cyberpunk.
It's interesting taking into account what Pawel said here. If you look through history, the cyberpunk genre has covered a variety of real-world issues. Everything that happens in 2077, it feels very current and modern. 3 years later, and I'm still impressed with the subject matter tackled here. The insane exploitation of sex workers in the Cloud's Judy and Evelyn questline, that almost feels like one of my diary entries from when I was in a similar position to Evelyn 8 years ago. The extremely thoughtful examination of religion and what spirits and souls even mean in the future, with the shocking but meaningful Sinnerman questline. Even smaller things like Blue Moon's story hitting even closer to home for me now, with its parasocial nature, having dealt with a few real-life incidents myself. The quality of storytelling is on another level, honestly. It's amazing how the writing staff was able to fit all of these very real and relevant themes into the genre of cyberpunk and have it all be fun. Well, except for that boring monk questline, but we don't need to talk about that. Like V, every single character you meet in this story has a personal fight of their own, and seeing them play out in their very real ways always makes me think of how I can still fight for the things I believe in, for the things I want to change about myself. A friend of mine, Jean Park, wrote an amazing article identifying the terminal illness subtext in V and Johnny's relationship, and relating it to his own battle against cancer. I always thought Jean's thoughts on the matter were really eye-opening, but now in 2023, after losing a friend and family member to the fucking nightmare that is cancer, and even going through my own upsetting medical journey, I've found even greater meaning in V's quest for survival. V's terminal clock keeps ticking as Johnny Silverhand develops in her mind. The ultimate fight for control V goes through can be read in so many different ways for all of us, but the one that stood out the most to me was the obvious cancer and terminal illness allegory that the rocker boy represents. A lot of V's internal conflict with Johnny is shockingly similar to how someone whose time is running out feels in real life. The constant back and forth between them in the early game reminded me of the feelings described by people I've spoken to who have had a terminal illness. It's like trying to reason with something you just can't change. I like how combative V and Johnny's relationship is for most of the game until both encounter Johnny's old friends, Rogue and Kerry, and as V makes new friends that genuinely care about her. You can tell Johnny feels less alone in the world knowing his friends made it. He wants to make sure they're okay, and V's the one who's going to give him that. V V can give Johnny one last chance to make amends with them, and it's honestly really beautiful seeing their reactions to the soul of their dearly departed Choom speak to them after dying in such a horrible, self-aggrandizing way back in 2023. It's like a part of Johnny is still alive with them. That terrible memory of his death partially overwritten in this weird way, in this cyberpunk way. The more I think about it, the more I really love it. Man, V and Johnny finally seeing eye to eye as she remembers him at what they think is his gravesite. It's so touching and feels so much like someone who's been struggling with their own demons finally coming to terms with them. Johnny gets to kind of return the favor, encouraging V to take her own path at the end, giving her friends one last call. With all of that said, I kind of appreciate how ending it all is also an option for V, and how Johnny doesn't even judge V for doing it either. However, taking that control leaves V's loved ones in shambles, and nothing expresses that hearing and seeing your loved ones react to this choice.
So V, how's the real afterlife looking? It as nice as they say. 'Cause down here, it's still shit. Hell, might even be worse than before. Just wish I had done more, so things might have come out different.
Positive energy, Victor. Hey, V. I was thinking about you the other day, and I thought I'd just give you a call. When I said I was thinking about you, I meant a lot. About everything you did. And still, V. Did you even think about, what happens when... Shit, I can't do this.
It's an amazing way to illustrate what this would be like for those of us in the real world who have contemplated such things, and how that would affect those around us. Kind of nudging us and V in the direction to keep on fighting. I love this title's endings because while V isn't cured of her terminal relic illness, she still gets another chance at life to some extent. It's a reminder that even when the clock is ticking, when the final hour is close at hand, we don't ever have to give up. V's story speaks to me now more than it did 3 years ago. I've always liked her as a character, but now after my recent playthroughs of everything, I have such a stronger connection to her. Getting to hear Johnny and so many other beautifully written characters tell V to never stop fighting is inspiring. Ever since playing 2077 when it released, I've had so many questions about classic character Johnny Silverhand. So I decided to throw a Hail Mary email request to R. Talsorian and chat about Johnny with the guy who created him. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir? Good sir.
Yeah, I have a standing introduction. My name is Mike Pondsmith, and I'm the guy who killed your Cyberpunk character.
Yeah. I was pretty excited. There's been a lot of debate online whether or not Johnny Silverhand is actually a cyber psycho. He doesn't have a ton of chrome, but based on his actions, he seems pretty crazy, right? Like he just burns down buildings and wants to mess everything up. So I just thought to ask, hey Mike, is Johnny Silverhand a cyber psycho? And of course, the answer blew my mind.
Because Never Fade Away only gave you a narrow picture of what he was like. Is that Johnny's a very cold son of a bitch. And that was, the way I always saw him was, this is one seriously damaged person. I mean, I actually have a story around, I've been building kind of the history of Johnny Silverhand. And, it starts off with the opening scene of his dad selling him at the age of 4 for basically a pack of cigarettes. And that's the good stuff, and how he ends up basically eventually ending up with, a nomad group that takes him in. And that in itself is an episode of interesting violence. So yeah, Johnny is messed up. Johnny is seriously messed up. And people have said, well, how come he can have the hand and all this stuff and not be cyber psychotic? And my answer is Johnny is cyber psychotic. Johnny, no one ever got the gag that when Johnny is killing Toshiro and company in the Arasaka building the first time, Never Fade Away, the hand is telling him what to do.
Interesting.
It's not Johnny deciding, it's the hand says bang. And that's, by that time, Johnny is pretty much psycho and immersed in his body appendage. And when we finally resurrect the Malorian in Black Dog, which is the last and closing story in the Red book, one of the characters, one of the solos, inherits his Malorian. And by that time, the Malorian has been shipped and cross-shipped to Johnny's hand, and all the stuff has been integrated, and she finds it starting to take her over.
Yeah.
There's this eagerness in the gun to, let me kill something,
For sure.
And that is, that's Johnny.
I always found it interesting how, the more you get into 2077, obviously the more V sort of becomes Johnny, but when you get the Malorian specifically, V kind of just does all the same exact tricks, reloading the gun and just racking it, and the way she fires it, or for me the way she fires it is just exactly how Johnny does it in the flashbacks. And it's just that gun has a mind of its own. It's interesting considering all the changes to gameplay that were implemented. I was curious to see if legendarily disappointing legendary boss fight Atom Smasher was improved at all. And we finally got Atom Smasher in 2.0. I can't even recall any memorable or even readable attacks that this guy would throw out in his original incarnation. Now he's an actual fight with moves you have to learn, and dodge and crouch under. It's so much more fun now. By the way, Maximum Mike also told me a pretty wild story about Atom after I asked a question that's been on my mind for years. Atom Smasher. The most humanity or no humanity?
Oh boy, Atom. Okay. Original Atom Smasher, you would have to go talk to Will Moss, who actually has finished writing a new piece for us recently. He's one of our original Talsorian crew, and he, I believe, came up with Atom, at least Atom's name.
Yeah.
And I kind of at some point decided that Atom was another one of those people who was more than over the edge, but he had redeeming qualities that you just didn't see. The only thing I did at one point, and it started off as kind of a joke, but I actually had him get involved with Michiko Arasaka. He was at that point in one of his more normal bodies because he has like a clothes rack. He was in a Gemini that looks something like Elvis, whom he loved. And basically he picks up on her and they get together for a while. And then she dumps him. And it was the last connection he had to anything he was going to care about. So at that point, he kind of said, well, so much for love and all that other shit. I'm out of here, And so he embraces that side of himself. I like to think of it as it was the last exit before Brooklyn, where he could still have some humanity. And when that was over, just tossed it, and he just became the monster he became.
I am so happy that I have true confirmation that the reason why Atom Smasher rejected all of his meat was because he got dumped. He had a heart at one point, but Michiko threw it away. Did you like that story? Are you ready for another one? This next story is filled with many players, obsessed with lies, secrets, and subterfuge. Do you have any secrets? Do you want to know one of mine? My sister died 2 years ago, fighting for a cause she believed in. She wanted to expose the lies of a corporation that killed our mother. My sister had a mission she almost completed, but a man at the top of the tower that she jumped out of snapped his fingers and made all of my sister's work disappear in the blink of an eye. Just slot the shard, and we can continue.
This is Kurt Hansen. If you're hearing this, you've come to the right place. In Dogtown, I keep your business safe as long as you abide by my rules. Sound fair to you? I thought so.
Cyberpunk's new expansion takes place in an entirely new part of Night City that technically isn't a part of Night City. Phantom Liberty's Dogtown has such a vastly different vibe to the rest of NC, a vibe I like to call joyous misery. Dogtown is a walled-off area in Pacifica owned by one Kurt Hansen, the leader of Barghest, a crew made up of ex-Militech soldiers who all fought side by side during the Unification War. The Barghest regularly recruit anyone with the guts to follow Hansen's orders, be they street rat, solo, or veteran merc. After dealing with the Pacifica Voodoo Boys, V gets a very out-of-nowhere call from an FIA special agent named Songbird. She urges V to meet her at the Dogtown entrance. Arriving, V is greeted with a bunch of information, like the NCPD not being allowed anywhere near this particular combat zone.
What the? It's like someone shoved my head in a place.
You're gonna be okay. Breathe deep. Count to 10. Recite a mantra. Whatever brings calm. Helps you stabilize.
Songbird nearly fries V's brain as she literally enters into the biochips stored in our heads. This intervention causes a full-on silver hand panic attack as a strange reddish-black digital residue covers the soul of the dead rocker boy. Songbird actually touches Johnny and shuts him off.
How in the...
All true, Johnny. But don't you fret. We're both safe.
Nah, fuck off.
Both of us on the biochip protocol at once can trigger shocks for V, like you just saw now. Gotta cut you off.
What?
For your safety, for V's safety.
What a fantastic and very sus way of introing this mysterious character. Whoever she is, she's extremely powerful tech-wise. Song levels with V, letting her know that she just entered the atmosphere on a Space Force One craft with none other than the NUS president in tow, Rosalind Myers, the craft being hacked and forced into Night City airspace. Fun fact for those who don't know, Night City is a free city, meaning it ain't part of the NUSA, so whoever's doing this must have a very no good reason for wanting the Prez's craft to crash near Dogtown. V being their only contact is contracted, against her will, to save President Myers, the payment in return being a cure for V's relic terminal illness. Song promises this to our edgy solo. I gotta be honest with you, just talking about this makes me really want to replay it. So let's put a pause on Phantom Liberty's story for now and talk about even more gameplay additions it brings to 2077. So the first brand new PL thing is the relic skill tree. This thing has been a mystery for about 3 years, and now it's ours. Being the supernatural netrunner that she is, right out of the gate, Songbird unlocks this part of the relic. Relic skills offer up some really insane abilities, like auto camo activation on detection or crouch, enemy cyberware vulnerability being displayed visibly on V's Kuroshis, and the advanced arm cyberware abilities, like the monowire melee hacking insanity I mentioned earlier. Relic points are stored in devices that you can only find in Dogtown. While I think each and every available skill on this tree is really cool, I would have liked to see more for maybe a few other pieces of cyberware. Maybe a new leg upgrade, or a Kuroshi implementation. Eye lasers? I'm just kidding. As you'd expect, Phantom Liberty is chock full of new gigs, those being of the main and side variety. Every single side quest in this expansion got way more attention than a majority of the ones found in the base game. You're dealing with fully fleshed out side stories here, where characters get to breathe a little more. Phantom Liberty's main story is a spy thriller, and every side quest also follows that theme. I honestly think this expansion is one of the most complete and consistent additions to an already existing game, with the amount of well-made content that you're getting. If you complete everything on the map, you're probably looking at a 40-hour experience. Full quests aside, CDPR went out of their way to introduce new dynamic, replayable content, like the new vehicle theft missions, which are active in and outside of Dogtown, and the always fun loot cache drop point events. When one of these drops lands, arriving at the scene, you'll be faced with a random encounter, be it a particular faction like the aforementioned Barghest, random mercs, or the Voodoo Boys. Sometimes you'll be the first to grab the loot, or it'll be high up, where V will have to scale whatever obstacles to get it. Some loot drops actually have iconic weapons in them, and lore files to read, giving you a bit more meaningful context on who the drop was meant for before V intervened. This drop system is probably my favorite thing about PL's gameplay loop because it essentially is infinite combat encounters, a radiant quest system naturally built into the world of the game. Creating your ideal build but having nothing to use it on was something that could plague the base game at its initial release, but now you've got a super legit reason to do combat in Dogtown. The vehicle theft missions are based around Fixer Muemar. These jobs are simple enough. Grab the targeted wheels and bring them to a specific destination. These random encounters will vary in their objectives, sometimes bonus feats like getting a car to a location untouched or in a certain time limit. I'm way more mixed on this activity purely because it does have a somewhat ending with an unlockable supercar and fully fleshed out side gig, kind of marking out ending points for this activity. Like, there's not much reason to do these once you complete those things. Some of the bonus objectives can feel unfair at times too, like having to drive a car from Japantown to the Badlands in like under a minute. Like, bro, it ain't happening. Don't get mad at me. Again, I'm really happy this activity is in the game because it strengthens and displays the vehicle combat and immersion of the city, but I do think it is a bit weaker in its execution than the loot drop points. It's also worth mentioning that Muemar has his own vehicle shop now and will sell you a majority of the cars that the other fixers annoyingly texted you about in the initial release. Again, another thing that makes Night City feel alive. Like, of course there would be a vehicle dealership of sorts in a modern futuristic world like this. Dogtown has a lot of its own weaponry that you'll find, like the QB DMR that I was absolutely addicted to. Oh my god, the Hawk iconic version that you get from President Myers is like one of my favorite guns now. There's also the very thick revolvers that you can find, and a ton of general iconic weapons. In the 2.0 update, most of the original iconics got overhauled with how they functioned. It feels like all of those pieces stand out a lot better now, and that's no different with the iconics that you get in Dogtown. They actually hand out iconics like free candy. Almost everywhere I looked, I was finding some good shit. Tech SMGs, the aforementioned President's DMR, and one of the most insane weapons I've ever used in a first-person shooter, an experimental M60 that fires tracking rounds that poison enemies, making them explode on overload. What? A lot of Cyberware also got the iconic overhaul with some new passive stats. It's just so cool now how everything on your version of V can be iconic after playing tons and tons of hours of the game. Much like Night City, D-Town also has really stellar level design. Dogtown has way more verticality and intentional platforming. I remember when 2077 came out, a lot of people I'd see online would use V's various leg cyberware to jump around and climb up buildings that maybe they shouldn't have been climbing. Well, I guess CDPR also watched those videos too, because it feels like Dogtown was built with exploration in mind, with the amount of high up mantle points, giant elevator shafts, and abandoned scaffolding sites to poke around through. The level design also feels like it was made to keep each loot drop point activity fun and fresh. Being a resident of Las Vegas, it was also really cool seeing the clear inspiration taken for a lot of the iconography around town. Okay, so back to PL's very cool story. As V agrees to help Song and Myers, we follow this hologram version of the mysterious Netrunner, sneaking into Dogtown through its dark and atmospheric bowels. This isolated part of NC is home to a massive sports arena. Getting to see this relic of the past is really cool, while Song and V get to know each other. Eventually, we're barfed out into the combat zone proper. It's awesome how this walled-off town has always been on the map, and I've passed by it so many times playing the base game, but seeing and being in it, knowing now that it's been this dense microcosm of scum and villainy, where anything goes, was so worth the wait for this expansion. Getting to the meeting point with Song, we see her and Myers' craft shot down by a missile. What follows is a mad dash through the streets of Dogtown, fighting through Barghest soldiers as townsfolk run for their lives. Hard not to get caught up in this wild scene with the music going off while enemies attack you from every which direction. It makes this place feel like you're very far from home. What's really cool from a role-playing perspective is you can actually ignore Songbird's orders and leave the president to die if you take too long or just refuse to find her. This obviously ends Phantom Liberty before it properly begins, but it does leave you with an open Dogtown to explore. Look at CDPR with their real consequences on display.
Oh, fuck's sake! Let go! If I do, you'll calm down?
It depends who you are.
Name's B. Here to help you.
Rosalind Myers. But you knew that. Apologies. I had to be sure it was really you.
Right. Let's Delta before...
Getting to Myers, we team up and yeah, she just throws down alongside V. It's so awesome. As a corpo-hating street kid, I was a little suspicious of this woman. She acts so nonchalant and cool during these fights and chases. I was like, man, is she playing me right now, or is she actually just this cool? My first 2.0 police chase was actually with the Barghest in this escort. It was pretty wild sneaking through the combat zone as public enemy number 1 for these goons. The low-key version of their battle theme is hella intense. It feels like survival horror music, you know? Like Nemesis is right around the corner waiting for you. Until it all hits the fan, of course, and then I'm crying in the club, chopping up bitches with my arm blades. It all creates a really sinister vibe, knowing that anything goes in Dogtown. These guys will do whatever it takes to hunt you down, especially since the president should not be in Night City at all, let alone this place. Eventually we make it past Hansen's troopers, where V and Myers retreat into a museum with a connection to a safe house found by Songbird. In this museum, we get to see a giant Atlas-like statue with the head of a dog, a black dog. I imagine Kurt Hansen adopting this imagery for his army when he took over this place, given the Barghest being a mythical black dog of sorts. That, or he's just a really big fan of Johnny Silverhand's music. So I'm going to give everyone another spoiler warning with the time on the screen, just because, like, I don't know. I was really surprised about what came next, and I want you guys to be surprised by it, especially if you're a fan of the cyberpunk genre. So skip to this time to skip ahead. Exploring the museum, V and Myers are jumped by Barghest, unsurprisingly. In the center of the room is a massive object under a giant tarp. As this pigeonholed battle rages on, Songbird surprises us with an ace up her sleeve.
God almighty! It's moving!
Beat the Chimera, a combat prototype from militant stables.
Jolly shit!
And we're clear. I detect no more. God.
What? Oh god, what?
Not looking good! Oh shit!
This is the Chimera, aka the literal spider tank from the end of Ghost in the Shell 1995. I could not believe what I was seeing. This mad dash away from the tank is one of the sickest things this game does. It's one of the sickest things any game does. What starts as a series of set-piece QuickTime events becomes a real boss fight with multiple phases. The actual fight takes place in a square room with a staircase at one end. The machine is sat in the middle of it all, firing lasers, rockets, and buzzing away with its gats. But this is all such a loving recreation of the ending of Gits 95. My jaw was on the ground during this entire fight, analyzing its weak points, destroying its combat drones that heal it, and of course, jumping on its back, ripping its battery shielding off, and blasting its ass to the moon. Utter perfection. While playing this fight, I tried to get some sick shots of my version of V, who, of course, I made as a sort of street kid version of Major Kusanagi. It was all a little surreal for me. Like, I know CDPR took a lot of feedback from my original video for the 2.0 update, but it really feels like they made this boss fight for me. I don't know. I just love it so much. I'm in love. Can you guys tell? The Chimera battery rip animation also plays out differently depending on your ARM cyberware. Like, they just did too much for this battle. It's amazing. Okay, so obviously I love this fight, right? Well, that's not the only reason why I think this moment is amazing. More than anything, this boss fight, being as highly polished as it is, right at the beginning of the expansion is like a direct message to the world, showing off how much progress this team has made in these past 3 years. This fight is pure quality, and that's what you're getting with Phantom Liberty. Making it to the safe house, there's no sign of Songbird. Myers asks V to pledge her loyalty to the NUSA, taking on a mission to find this misplaced Songbird, while also summoning up the assistance of one of her sleeper agents, Solomon Reed. Which, speaking of Reed,
all the rotten fish in one fucking barrel, this Dogtown.
Don't turn around. Eyes on the court. Hands, what you holding?
Got this token? Mean anything to you?
But I need to make sure.
Keeps his cards close, this one.
Who sent you?
Rosalind.
I don't know any Rosalind. And neither do you.
Got a pro spy here, V.
Is she safe?
Hard to say. The longer we sit here.
That's it. Dribble around him.
You followed? Did you even bother to check?
Don't know. Wasn't looking for a tail.
Well, you get 1 point for being candid. Atta girl. Black Thornton Merrimack, illustrated. 3 minutes, front seat.
So Idris Elba plays Solomon Reed, and he plays him very well, but this game is a spy thriller. Reed is a super spy. Having access to CDPR, I obviously asked the most appropriate question that everyone's been thinking about, but I'm curious. Was the popular idea of Idris Elba playing James Bond at some point a factor in him getting hired for this Phantom Liberty story?
No, I don't think it was.
A total fabrication.
However, that was something that we touched on when we were discussing casting him for the role. We were looking for a character with a specific characteristics, and again, you played the game, so you know what I'm talking about. A really dominating, captivating, charismatic, really like maybe a father figure, a mentor, for in this case, Somi, a person that would fit for a quote-unquote master spy role. And because of all of those, we sort of arrived on Idris Elba, and we thought like this guy would really work here well. I'm curious if we can get him. And again, I can understand why people think that Idris Elba fits to 007 role, because obviously he has all of those characteristics that made us originally cast him, right, for the role of this master spy. So that actually, I think it all comes from this one spine, which is who actually Idris Elba is, his style of playing the characters, his way of acting. And I guess it just proves that he would be great 007,
Reed is one of those characters that, as a role-playing street kid, I kinda hated myself for loving so much. Reed was and still is a top FIA agent who happened to work under President Myers and alongside our missing Songbird. Reed is loyal to the NUS, almost to a fault, living his entire life by the book. Orders are orders to him, even in the face of betrayal. You see, 7 years ago, after completing a mission, Reed was ambushed and thought to be killed in action while escaping Night City on a train. Reed is very forthcoming with his backstory, wanting V to fully trust him as their relationship grows. So who was responsible for this ambush that almost took him out? Well, none other than the FIA and our elusive Songbird. When Reed finds out that his mission includes finding Song, you can really see the shift in his demeanor, but it isn't quite clear. Revenge? Regret? I guess we'll find out very soon. We've discussed the amazing Chimera tank already, but something I love about Phantom Liberty is how techy it is. We get to see way more amazing technology used in the main quest and pretty much in every part of this story, unlike the base game, which could get a little inconsistent at times. This was a point I brought up in my previous 2077 video, where some of the quests felt like they lacked cyberpunk in the storytelling, where in Phantom Liberty, cool gadgets and cyberware are much more present. Wow, it's almost like CDPR watched my very calm, politely worded video and took what I said to heart. See guys, if you've got a problem, just be cool about it. I love how much more future tech toys make their way into the actual storytelling of Phantom Liberty this time. Spider tanks, face-swapping technology, personality copying, and more exploration of the cyberspace black wall. But yeah, we'll get into that stuff in a bit. One key player in the day-to-day drama of Dogtown is Mr. Hands. No, not the one you're thinking of. This guy helps you out with finding the Voodoo Boys in the base game, but now we actually get to spend more time with him, doing gigs, solving political strife around town, and actually meeting him in the flesh multiple times. There's one main quest where you snoop around a fancy party held by Kurt Hansen, and Hans is there, but pretends to not know you. But when you walk away from him, he sends you a cute text saying it was nice to see you in person again. The main villain of this expansion is the leader of Barghest, Kurt Hansen. Hansen is basically Cyber Krauser. He barks orders at people, comes off very calm and intimidating when he needs to be, and he really isn't afraid to confront anyone, even suspecting V and Reed of being secret FIA agents simply because he hasn't seen them in town before. That's how connected to Dogtown Hansen is. He's got this place under his thumb at all times. He's also got a great boss fight too. Again, talk about it later. I really loved hearing Kurt's ominous City 17-esque broadcast throughout Dogtown. He's one of those rulers that offers such amazing freedoms, but those freedoms come at the price of you having to live in a nightmare world. And don't you dare ask any questions or you'll be zeroed on the spot. Sounds really fair, right? V and Reed's ultimate sneaking mission into that fancy party I mentioned earlier is one of the best parts of the game and goes to show how protected Hansen really is. It's funny because you start the story escorting the literal president through the mud and grime of Dogtown, this figure that should be respected, just completely out of her element, only to find that Hansen's treated like actual royalty, respected and protected by the biggest names in NC and what seems like every other part of the world, with the amount of nation reps that are just chilling at his party. This mission did a lot for this character for me. It's really sick seeing how disconnected and threatening Dogtown is compared to the constant political strife of Night City. None of that shit matters here. I had so many thoughts when Songbird herself showed up at Hansen's special party. She was acting rather buddy-buddy with this guy. I was kinda terrified seeing how utterly chromed out Songbird was. Her entire body has been modified, bordering on a full body transfer. Whatever the FIA had been doing to her was a far cry from her digital double we met up with earlier. You can really sense an extreme amount of tension when Reed finally confronts her. Reed is extremely upset with this woman. He's finally talking to her face to face after 7 years, after she kind of got him killed. Her guilt of betrayal also shining through her eyes. All of this tension snaps cleanly in half by Hansen butting into the convo. Here we learn pretty fast that Song is in fact tethered to this wild dog, sending Reed into a sulking fit. I love how Phantom Liberty actually takes full advantage of the spy genre with scenarios like this one that keep us guessing. Reed's been a pretty accommodating guy until he shows up out of nowhere to give you face replacement surgery, kidnaps some rich kids, offing them in the process. There were points in PL's story where I genuinely didn't know who to trust. As soon as Song and Hansen walked off, it was clear that she had some part in grounding Myers' craft. And Reed, despite being a fairly charming guy, was showing off some sketchy behavior to get his job done. As a lifelong street kid, my anti-corpo mindset was firing off every red flag around these two straight from the beginning of the game. All of this distrust and confusion culminates into the game's ultimate choice. Again, skip to the time on screen to avoid the endings of Phantom Liberty. At a certain point, Songbird digitally contacts V. Meeting up with her, she finally opens up about her past, growing up in Brooklyn, telling a really cute homely story, and also confessing to helping Hansen shoot down the president. Song tells V that her plan was to secure an experimental and invaluable neural matrix Hansen's been hiding in the confusion. Songbird opens up about Myers using her skill at net running to get beyond the black wall. You know, that cyberspace hellscape filled with rogue AIs? Yeah, Song's been there a lot and lived to talk about it. Problem is, she loses a small piece of herself every time she dives in. Memories and personality. She is effectively becoming a tool of the NUSA, effectively being overwritten by their protocol, something quite familiar to V. This neural matrix was found dug up from an old Militech facility buried deep underground. The matrix itself houses a rogue AI, found from beyond the black wall. It's said this AI has the means to curing V's relic terminal illness and help Songbird recover from her countless consciousness-overriding black wall dives. Hearing this disgraced netrunner talk about this stuff is definitely compelling, but in the moment, it could all be just that, a story she's spinning, like the web you might be caught in. After successfully sneaking our way into Hansen's home base as another person, we get to choose who we side with, Song or Reed. The choice was difficult to make. Hand over this poor street kid netrunner turned weapon for another nation's government, or try giving her another chance at freedom her own way. Siding with Song sabotages Hansen's entire base of operations, tapping into and going beyond the black wall to destroy the base's security. Doing this, V's pal Alex, who is also a great character I didn't even mention yet, kills Hansen. I'm talking she massacres this guy, taking him out of the story for good. What follows is either a really cool stealth mission, where Song assists in turning the stadium's defenses against its inhabitants, or, you know, fucking killing spree. The soundtrack for not only this area, but the entirety of Phantom Liberty is kinda like the film Neon Demon had a baby with Ghost in the Shell 1995. The vibes are all off with the particular sound the OST is pumping into the scene, while Songbird leaves behind that familiar black-red residue we saw overtake Johnny at the start of this story. It turns out that digital demonic energy is actually traces of the Black Wall's infection within Songbird, but manifesting in the environment just in V's mind. It's funny because this was my first choice for PL's ending, and immediately I started regretting the decision. Songbird isn't herself here. You can tell things aren't exactly going good for her. I may have jumped to conclusions a bit during this entire set piece. One thought kept running through my mind, that being, oh, there isn't a cure for V, is there? She just wants to use me to escape because I have demonic mantis blades that can cut through anything. After getting out of Hansen's stadium, Reed calls us, trashing the hell out of V, and we meet back up with Song in an alley as she tells us her new plan. To the moon, everyone. I hope you're excited. This level is so sick. You can actually get busted at a legit TSA checkpoint if you don't follow all of Songbird's instructions, or you can get through unscathed. Both methods play out very differently, but I like to play it cool. Keep up the spy fiction facade, sneaking about with a disguise, and getting Song in undetected. On the roof, we discover Reed has caught up with our duo, and pretty much shows his true colors, siding with President Myers, who's a lot less cool now that her top secret sentient black wall weapon is now on the run. Myers orders her NUS troopers to find Song by any means necessary, turning this place into a legit war zone. Helicopters, heavy troopers, death everywhere, and it's becoming clearer that perhaps V isn't on the right side of history. The final battle is absolutely insane. Cornered by Myers' most elite stooges, Song and V have to get a tram up and running to get to the escaped spacecraft, and oh my god, the music goes way too hard here. No other track in this game compares to Contra La Luna. As hordes of NUS soldiers flood into the arena, the music steadily amplifies in this cybernetically unhinged way. Taking out what feels like most of the NUSA army, Song finally makes it to the station's control console, where, of course, she needs a little more time to get the tram to us.
What now?
I'll fire up the control panel. Bring the train in.
How long's this gonna take?
As long as it fucking takes. You have a job. Focus on that.
All right.
This is where the music goes insane. I think P.T. Adamczyk should win an award just for this song alone. This shit is psychotic and perfectly matches the cyber psychosis one would have to hold off some of the strongest soldiers in this particular universe. The track's drop, coupled with my mantis blade killing spree, was like witnessing V's inner cyber demon bursting out of her. One of the best combat encounters in the game, bar none. Song finally summons the train, but she's in trouble. The NUSA troopers and gunship have her pinned down. With no other options, Song taps back into the black wall, but not alone this time.
Had a little luck. Can't last long. We're fucked, you know? I have to drop past the wall. No other way.
Neural bridge, let's go. Be your backup.
Always can use a proxy. Ready for this?
Fire it up.
Fucking cyber god.
V, you hear that?
It's the black wall. No fear, Song. Right here with you.
The absolute horror coming out of these guys, getting twisted and contorted by the black wall's demonic energy coursing through them, solidified my doubts. This clearly isn't right, but it feels so good. After all that, Songbird comes clean and admits that there's only one dose of cure that she's been saving for herself to use once she gets to the moon. You actually get the choice of ratting her out to Reed here, but, you know, street kid and all, I would never do that. Maybe Johnny's been overwriting my real-life identity, but I just don't see the use in tattling on her at this point. V was hired to do a job that she will finish. Besides, we're basically home free now.
Fucking hell.
Stop there.
Look. Putting her down.
So now.
This final confrontation is admittedly pretty rough. Reed being a genuinely great character makes it hard to side against, even though, if you've made it to this moment, you're not on his side. You get to control the flow of the conversation here, deciding whether or not you end up with a cynical or sympathetic outcome. You can accept Reed's new offer of handing over Song and taking her cure for yourself, or you can take down Reed and give Song a chance at a new life. The ultimate question being, is this thing even the same girl we met days prior? Or is the Black Wall using her as a human connection to escape the borders of earthly law and do whatever it wants? You saw what happened at the spaceport. Reed really tries with V here, giving you every opportunity to do the quote-unquote right thing. As a role-playing street kid, you already know that I did not hand Song over, which yes, meant that...
Not giving her up, Saul. No.
So damn late.
Stepping over Reed's body and strapping Songbird in as she takes her final look at Night City before heading off into the stars made me feel uneasy. This is an extremely cynical end to a story filled with twists and lies. It made me feel rather empty, if I'm being completely honest. Like I was missing out on something, you know? I had only heard about what happened between Reed and Song. As an outside observer, that's just scratching the surface of this mystery. A mystery I guess I'd never get the answer to. Yeah, you know, like that, the ending was like so good, you know, like going to the moon. Like, how did she come up with that? That's so crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, you like that one?
Yeah, it was so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but what about the what about the other one?
What other one? What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Wait. So you played like only the one with the moon? That's it?
There's
Like
another. There's another one. What do you mean?
Okay, I mean one thing. I think because of your own interests and your profile and what you like, I think you definitely need to try the second one, okay? And you need to tell me what you think, what you thought about it, okay? Just go back and make different choices, okay? And tell me what you think.
Turning it on. I'm turning it. Okay, so siding with Reed, Song goes full Blackwall pulse, but on us this time. Yours and Reed's partner, Alex, is slaughtered by Kurt Hansen, leaving him for V to deal with. Now that's what I'm talking about. Full-on Cyber Krauser knife fight incoming. I had the most jarring case of whiplash, walking through these halls alone without the comfort of a literal cyber god to clear a path for me. V against Songbird is genuinely intimidating. A very quick signifier that Kurt Hansen will only be a stepping stone to the final boss, which we know is coming. Regrouping with Reed, we do our best to track down Song, as the NCPD actually enters Dogtown. I guess news travels fast. Hansen's dead. It's safe to come in now. Song is apprehended by MaxTac and taken prisoner. Reed and V quickly come up with a plan to intercept Song's prison escort, and you can really tell that at this point, Reed is completely out of it. Everything he says here, depending on if you push him for info, comes off so regretful. Like, there's more at stake here for him than anyone else. He really wants to save Song at all costs. The line between soldier doing his job and desperate friend is fading fast. With the help of a netrunner of your choosing and the NUSA Propaganda 6th Street gang, Reed plans the ambush of a lifetime on that MaxTac convoy escorting Song. It's interesting how, while waiting for the ambush, Song surprisingly calls V. During this call, off in the distance, you can actually see a spacecraft taking off from the Morrow Rock spaceport. A grim reminder or foreshadowing of and to the other ending. It's like a glimpse into a timeline that almost happened from this one's perspective. The timing on the call makes it feel like Song's final imagining of escaping the planet coming true. Sadly, we're not in that timeline, and we absolutely have to stop her at all costs. The first stop in this insane ending gauntlet is the Cyber Psycho MaxTac squad escorting Song. These are all Psycho soldiers, so they are one with their chrome. The highest level Sandevastans blocking and dodging all of your attacks. You actually have to wait for Reed to disable each enemy's cyberware before you can even think about damaging them. This fight can be one of the hardest or easiest, depending on your playstyle. I had to put the mantis blades away for the first time and actually take cover, popping shots on these fools when it was safe to. Taking down these wild goons, Song takes off by hacking the armored truck she's held in. Reed gets severely injured in the fight, leaving V to pursue the fading Netrunner. Song leaves a trail of destruction in her wake that leads us deep underground to a long-forgotten ancient Militech facility, the Cynosure facility. Out of every area in Night City, the Cynosure bunker feels the most creepy. Like, right away. Johnny and Reed let V know that this place predates the data crash, and once existed as Militech's answer to Arasaka's deadly Mikoshi system. Cynosure Tech effectively being a means to diving deep into the net, a facility where runners could capture and tame rogue AIs beyond the Black Wall. In essence, the perfect place for someone needing a strong direct link to said Black Wall. Judging by the state of this place, it's long been abandoned. A partially possessed Songbird appears to us on the ancient data terms, threatening and also warning V to stay away from this place.
You never will. Not fully. Not me. How it feels to lose yourself. Layer after layer. Reed stole my life. Once already. I won't let him steal it again. You still trust Reed? It's more convenient, yes? Gears sinking, grasping at straws as the deluge consumes you. Saul, Myers, their promises didn't help me. Won't help you.
Who am I even talking to right now? That's still you, Somi? Or the Black Wall?
The Black Wall is... it's help. It helps me understand everything.
Songbird, barely herself, fights for control over her mind, the Black Wall speaking through her in such a flowery, nihilistic way. Severing her connection, V goes deeper. Taking a very familiar-looking diagonal elevator down into the facility, the vibes continue to get weirder and creepier. For a moment, as I rode this very long lift down, I couldn't help but think how similar all of this was to Resident Evil 2's ending lab. If that wasn't enough to kick off the creepiness of this place, Song disables all of V's external communication. V is all by herself now, in a scary, dark lab. I didn't want to jump the gun here by saying out loud what I thought CDPR was about to do, but then the first door I opened gave it all away. Man, that door sure did open really slowly, almost as if I was about to be chased through this lab by something. I've played too many horror games, CDPR. You can't fool me. Crawling through the guts of this lab, we find ourselves in a distorted memory playing out in front of us. Song and Hansen arguing about going too far with downing Myers' craft. Suddenly, it all fades away as we emerge in the facility's main corridor. We're locked out of this place's core control room, the area most likely where Song is being held. Our first step is disabling the main door's locks. Song, now desperate, urgently warns V that something will kill her if she proceeds.
You don't understand. You can't. She tried to stop you. Now it's too late.
Yeah, so this entire ending is like an hour and a half of pure hide-and-seek horror. CDPR made an indie horror game as the ending of Phantom Liberty. It's so cool. This is the Cerberus mech. It's powered up by the Blackwall and completely unkillable. Since it is a massive piece of machinery, staying out of its sights is imperative. I'm not gonna dock points because, to my knowledge, this is CDPR's very first horror anything game design related, but in hide-and-seek horror situations, pursuers often fall victim to one very tragic element of game design. That being, if the AI is actually good, it's usually their backside. As long as you stay in this thing's shadow, you're pretty much invisible. It was really fun getting to this part and immediately thinking, oh my god, is the trick gonna work? And sure enough, it did. By the way, this weakness doesn't take away from the Cerberus's terrifying nature, as you will be put in many situations where this thing has you cornered, forcing you to take cover and hide. I love how Songbird's voice can be heard coming from this monster, but it's actually the Blackwall using her to intimidate and terrorize. Occasionally, the real Song will break through to warn V of the machine's presence. I genuinely love this part of the game. It reminds me of so many other classic games that randomly have these little one-off novelty horror sections. Even though I was able to use my entire life's worth of horror game experience to outsmart this guy, the entire scenario is phenomenal. Putting something like this in Phantom Liberty, having a real, well-designed cyberpunk horror level with multiple paths and rooms to explore, staying out of sight with shortcuts and deviously designed scenarios that put you in this thing's way, is just so sick. It gets an A+ from me. Good job, CDPR. Sneaking around, we encounter another faded memory of Song's past. We get to see her moments before the body conversion surgery. Things we may have only inferred are being laid bare. The horrors of this poor girl's early life and indoctrination playing out in this disjointed way. This whole area with its tight, dark corridors, shaded with visions of the past, is quite the chilling representation for Songbird desperately clinging onto her memories as the Blackwall deletes and overwrites them. A few of these patchwork memories actually show Reed hanging with Song, convincing her that the FIA is the way to go, promising a better life for her despite other memories we see of her clearly suffering after dangerous deep dives and horrifying night terrors. Uh-oh, Reed. Things aren't looking too good for you, buddy.
Who the fuck are you?
Finally finding Song locked away in the facility's AI core, this massive sphere that we have to shut down, we come face to face with the Cerberus.
Show me! Please.
Before it kills V, she passes out, waking up in another mind-linked memory of Song's. This time, we're seeing everything clearly. A lot of which is the absolute truth behind Song's early life and recruitment by Reed. This cozy place that we're in is actually Song's old Brooklyn, New York apartment. This scene hits really hard for me. Song talks about how when the Blackwall starts up with its all-consuming presence, Song would retreat into this place, playing back her old memories. Memories of regret, joining up with the FIA, leaving all of her friends behind. She actually apologizes to V for everything before disappearing into more memories that manifest in front of us. The Blackwall has consumed so much of this woman's mind that all that remains are these harsh thoughts and flashbacks of the moments she regrets the most. We get to see Reed downright pressuring her into joining him and how she just wasn't having any of it. We see her boyfriend pissed at her for diving too deeply into the net, self-harming in the process. It's rough seeing Song speechless at her boyfriend asking where her new life leaves him, right before he leaves her. Song's burnt so many bridges out of what may seem like selfishness, but that's not really the case. I'd like to say some things before we continue. I happen to relate so much to all of this. Being a kid from Brooklyn, wanting to move past my life at the time, growing up wanting something better for myself, not seeing a whole lot of value in the things around me or in myself. I pushed everyone away from me basically becoming a shut-in multiple times throughout my life. Then, of course, getting pressured into a life I hated and regretted. Conversations I had with friends that tried to warn me that what I was doing wasn't the right call. And I knew it wasn't, but I went with the toxic influences around me at the time, instead of listening to people that I knew loved and cared about me, leaving everyone and everything behind at the idea of being better, at a false promise. Like Song, I left my home behind to pursue something I was pressured into. I was persuaded into. It hurt all the time, for years. I'd retreat into my own memories of Brooklyn, hanging out with my friends, playing video games, writing all the time, and dreaming of making my own movie. It all felt very real and genuine compared to what I had become after leaving New York. Sometimes our dreams of living large and becoming something greater are taken advantage of by people who just want to use us. I'm sorry. The end of Songbird's story is also pretty relatable. As the black wall closes in on the dream apartment, V wakes up, the Cerberus now disabled. The path to the AI core is opened. Reed finally has our signal again and is en route. Inside the core, Song lies strung up by wires, chaining her into this place. This final conversation is so rough. Song begs V to end her life. Pull the plug or wait for Reed to get there. Given everything that's happened to her, the cyber psycho I lost trust in the previous ending was now splayed out before me. A shred of human life beyond taken advantage of. Lied to, betrayed by her own support system, and us was all that was left. The begging to end it all was what really got me, as I've been in this kind of situation in my life, saying the same things, feeling like I wasn't able to continue, feeling like my time was up. I was done.
Reed will be here any second. You'll make it through.
No. They'll never let me go. I'm fading, V. Help me out.
So me. I
tried on my own. Don't have the strength. Please. End it.
So me. We got the neural matrix. We'll use it. Cure you. Cure me. It's all good. We'll be all good.
It's too late for me. Blackwall. It's taken almost all of me. Dying is my only hope. Only way out. Please, V.
This choice is one of the toughest in the game. Seeing everything that she went through, surviving her memories in the form of staying out of the Cerberus' sight. If we hand her over to the FIA, she'll be their puppet for Blackwall research, a literal husk trapped behind a comatose digital wall, seeing and feeling herself do whatever heinous things the NUSA wants from her. Or we can give her a peaceful ending with dignity, let her finally sleep for the first time in years.
Always been your choice, Somi. I get it now. And I gotta respect it.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for everything.
Show me.
In the end, all that Reed wanted was to correct his mistake, fix what he was responsible for, tricking this girl into becoming a weapon with little to no free will, a selfish act executed perfectly by a man coerced by his government. Even after getting betrayed by her, he came back to life to save hers, but it just wasn't going to happen. The car ride to the Night City border is a quiet one, with Reed just being sad about the whole situation. This game's usual bright colors now muted out here, a visual representation of this story's dark conclusion. President Myers finally faces us again, not giving us even a little bit of that quote-unquote real person we fought alongside. I like telling Myers to go fuck herself here before comforting Reed. For the first time, we truly feel the human coming through the tough armor Reed's built around himself. The regret is real, but nothing can be done about it. Song is dead. It was his fault. He failed his mission, even though I'd never tell him that. Phantom Liberty ends with a song by David Pochadva that is 100% 007 inspired. The lyrics are basically everything that's happened in the story. It's fantastic, and the accompanying stylized music video punctuates the fabulous spy thriller aesthetic that's all come to its permanent melancholic conclusion. It's funny comparing the two ending paths. Reed's feels like the canon ending, and Song's feels almost like the bad ending, but having the context for both gives you a full story. It's almost Nier-like in its distribution of certain plot points that paint a clearer image of what's going on in these characters' lives. I think only after experiencing both was I able to make a decision with which one I felt the most comfortable with calling my ending. Personally, at the end of the day, taking both paths into account and all of Songbird's history, I'm glad I sent her to the moon. I don't regret it. I like Solomon Reed a lot, but man, would I hate being in Song's shoes if, after all of this, I had to go back and face Myers' wrath, rotting in cyber hell with no end in sight. No thank you. I also want to apologize for injecting my own personal life story into that analysis. It was just so shocking how similar a lot of Song's story was to my own past. Obviously, I've never become a cyber goddess, but all of that Brooklyn stuff hit really hard. I'm not gonna get into the gory details about what happened to me. A lot of it is online, but having this mental tug of war about deciding what's right for you in your own life, having multiple people who may or may not have your best interest in mind whispering their truths into your ears can be downright life-threatening and self-destructive, especially for a kid. If anything can be said about what Song goes through, it's that you shouldn't give up despite being dealt a shitty hand or finding yourself in a terrible situation that you may have been forced into. There's always a chance to save yourself. Don't lie to people to get your way, and always think twice before doing anything. But please trust me in saying that you can help yourself before things get worse, before you feel like hitting the emergency eject button on life. Much like the other endings for V, take what CDPR is saying with Song and let it inspire you to want to escape from your tragedy. Man, what a video this has become. But yeah, that's Phantom Liberty, a wonderful expansion that I may as well say is my all-time favorite for any video game. CDPR's storytelling is off the charts here. I actually like Phantom Liberty a lot more than the base game. And that's not to say I dislike the base story now or whatever. I just really love Phantom Liberty. I hope we get even more of this level of quality for Cyberpunk's future. Speaking of those lovely people who made this game, something that kept running through my mind these past 3 years was how CDPR's own staff felt about the initial release of 2077. I've had the good fortune and pleasure of actually becoming friends with a lot of the Reds who worked on this game. I personally know a lot of their stories, but I thought I'd let a few of them express themselves for this video.
Well, I mean, you know, the release was tough as hell, you know, for a lot of us. The reality was that, you know, most of us worked on this game for like 5 years, you know, some of us who started like on this very early prototypes, even longer, right? 6, maybe 7, you know, even if you've been in this like extremely small team that like started early ideation. And if you spend this many years on something, and I'm not talking about just a job and you go home, but you spend every waking hour thinking about it, you know, maybe not working, but thinking about it. And you just you are dedicated to that. And you try to do everything you could, and you're doing everything you know from other projects that succeeded, which is Witcher 3. you know that you're doing pretty much the same, you're even better, and you feel that you're like your knowledge is higher, you know, the team is better, the team's bigger as well, you know, you can feel that you can do so many different things. When you spend this many years and then it just crushes, it's so destructive, you know. It's so sad.
It's so difficult, right? Like the launch, of course, was, I don't think, what any one of us wanted or expected. You know, imagine pouring your hearts, like literally, this is why we make games. There's no game developers who go into making games to, you know, like have it bomb or make bad games. That doesn't exist. So pouring your hearts into something like that and then sort of like it turning out like that was very heartbreaking. And I know the team, you know, was basically like on the ground with, you know, how demoralized we all were, but it was also really, really cool, and especially now in hindsight, you know, to kind of see that sort of fighting spirit activate so relatively quickly after launch, and people just kind of wanting to prove everyone wrong on the internet. We're not gonna abandon this, and we're not bad developers or something. We're not in just for the cash grab or something, right? We really, really want to make fucking awesome games.
You know, Susie, like I was saying it, you know, before, but literally, like, you know, we were getting death threats like daily, you know. I was not even any more surprised by that, you know. I kept getting it everywhere. Like, you know, like all the social media, like sometimes just via email, you know, sometimes on Facebook, like places where I haven't been really like, you know, acting out on with my professional side, but more like a, you know, private, I don't know, account for like family and stuff. It was even there, you know.
Like, how are you feeling when the game first came out?
On one level, it's oh shit, you know. I thought, you know, not this thing. The thing is this, most people don't know I've worked in video games. I had been working in video games for at least 10, 15 years before this came up. And I had been involved in a lot of the decisions and discussions of how it was going to be done. So I, from the beginning, thought, yeah, you guys are really rushing it. But I knew the externals that would drive that. For example, you know, I had a project I worked on for Microsoft, where, you know, we knew we had to have it together and the product had to be out according to marketing so that it wouldn't miss not only the marketing situation, you know, what we had planned for marketing, but it had to fit into what Walmart wanted and what Target wanted. And so those timetables were always over our shoulders the whole time. And so, you know, there were times when I ended up shipping stuff that I just went, I really wish we hadn't shipped it like that. And people go, well, we'll get the patch in, you know, and I'm going, this is ridiculous. They had that problem. My first conversation with Adam was the same that, you know, Lisa as business manager had. You are going to fix this, right? And they went, oh yeah, we're going to fix this. Yeah. And we've seen the evidence that they fixed it.
Yeah.
You know, and I knew why they did it, just like I've gone through crunch times where I slept under my desk at work, you know, and know what it's like to crawl it out. And half the time you're not doing crunch because somebody over you wants to just do crunch. You're doing it because you cannot make that deadline unless you do it. And really, I think it's important that, you know, the upper management, the guys in the executive suite, have a sense of that this isn't like just pulling a switch. You know, you've got to give it the time to get done. And they didn't get the time to get done. But they did honor what I asked. And I was happy with that. They went ahead and they did upgrades and they did work on it and they fixed the bugs. And, you know, they got everything much, 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 much better. And as they had more time, they were able to bring the game to the fruition I think was in their heads, and they didn't have marketing saying it's going to have this and it's going to have that. I remember people showing up, you know, complaining like, I can't go to any of the noodle bars and eat. And I'm going, why do you're not living in Night City, you know, you're just playing in Night City. And if you can eat it in a noodle bar, it's not going to be every noodle bar. It's going to be one that you go to and you get something out of it. I had friends on the team, and they were getting death threats.
Yeah.
And I'm going, you know, and one of the things I think came out of this was, I think the fans have come to realize that they have to let things, no matter how much they love them, come to fruition. They have to give them the space to make something good. And I think a lot of marketers have realized that you can oversell a thing, and that sometimes you really do need to just slow down a little and back off, so that the team that has to make it can deliver something realistic. The game now is beautiful. It is as well, you know, even before we had, you know, I think it was patch 3. By that time, you know, I get in a car and I just, you know, I drive all over town. I don't even do, you know, missions. I just go, this is a really great, this is just what I had in my mind, you know. I have places in Night City I hang out in.
Do you have any closing statements that you want to put out there? Just like if you want people to look forward to anything in particular with Phantom Liberty or 2.0?
Yeah, I think I do. And I really, really hope that you will feel as a player that if you've been following Cyberpunk and CD Projekt or any of our employees, if you've been following us for all of these years and just checking and rooting for us, you will feel fulfilled. And you will feel that it was worth it, you know, and you will feel that the trust has been paid off. I really hope they will have a blast with the game, and they will just feel invigorated by the whole community coming back together around this game.
I streamed this game recently and actually got pretty emotional by the game's end. Seeing what Songbird went through, seeing my own name in the credits, and remembering the pain my friends who worked on this game were going through all got to me. I just couldn't hold it in anymore. So how about this? Instead of ending this video on a downer note like my last one, I thought I'd just say, hey, CDPR friends and Cyberpunk 2077 fans, you made it, we made it. Look at us. We're right here, right now. The game is actually out now, and Phantom Liberty is fantastic. Here's to many more years of exploring the dark future, and many thanks to all you legends that made this game possible, and a special thank you to Mike Pondsmith for making all of this happen. Show's over, Choom. Got no more stories for ya. Can't you see my cord's unplugged? Oh, what's that? You're surprised by my change in demeanor? Well, I've got another surprise for you. And it's that you're fucking under arrest, gonk. What a grade A gonk you are. Yeah, that's right. You're going to jail for unlawful fixer work. You think those contracts were legal, idiot? No. Now put your mantis blade back in your pants and come with me. Or else you'll get some wildcat hot iron straight between the eyes. And I don't miss. Motherfucker. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this very, very special video that I spent like 2 months making. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tons and tons of things came up while I was making this that reset its progress. Just deleted all of it. I had to redo it like 1.5 times. I had to wait for all these people that I wanted to interview, and you know, thank you so much, Alex Jordan, and I'm sorry, Miles Toast, I couldn't put your whole interview in this thing, and Pawel Sasko, my great friend, and of course Mike Pondsmith for making time for me, taking the time out of your very busy schedule, writing and creating this universe to talk to me about it. It's just, I can't believe it. I'm so happy that Cyberpunk is in the state that it's in, and I got to be a part of it twice. Oh my god, I can't believe it. A huge shout out to everyone who got to this point in the video. Thank you guys so much for checking it out. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and checking out my Patreon, link in the description. I am so sorry that I had to put my other video on the sidelines for this one, but that one's coming soon, I promise. Alright guys, Thank you all so much for all your support, and I'll see you all very soon.